This is PRIME7 Local News.
Tonight, wild conditions from the border to Yamba as an east coast low forms off Queensland. Motorists urged to slow down after a rising toll on the local koala population.
And later this news hour, the harrowing stories as a new COVID wave pushes our hospitals to the brink and a charity worker brutally beaten as his attackers film the act.
Now, PRIME7 Local News.
Good evening. Surf and weather warnings are in place south of the border as another east coast low develops off southern Queensland. At this stage, most of the action will be offshore. The Coffs Harbour commercial fishing fleet is taking shelter and pedestrians have been locked out of dangerous locations, with swells increasing over the coming days.
Just one solo surfer braving the choppy conditions at Park Beach today atop a powered hydrofoil surfboard. Further north at Ballina Bar, the chop, wind and rising swell mean seas are too hazardous for recreation of any sort.
It's going to be a pretty wild surf, so obviously the low is going to be very close to the land, so the swell period will be quite short across the weekend, so it'll be pretty messy and obviously very storm surgy, so we might experience a bit of coastal erosion.
Coffs Harbour pedestrian gates were closed today to prevent a repeat of last year's tragic drowning off the southern breakwall.
When the swell gets above 3 metres, the water can wash across the wall on the north and south wall and the jetty, so to keep people away from those areas where they could be washed off.
Even the jetty closed to foot traffic, with conditions expected to worsen over the weekend.
There's currently a strong wind warning for the Coffs and Byron coast. This will extend down to the Macquarie coast tomorrow, and Byron can expect gale force winds tomorrow.
Obviously people using the ocean, so surfing, swimming, rock fishing, going out in the boats, that's, to reconsider the need to do that across the weekend.
At the fishing co-op, the crew of this 20-metre sashimi tuna longliner were busy restocking the hull freezers with fresh ice between showers.
Obviously we've come in because there's a bit of a low coming down the coast and it's going to get pretty severe out there. So we time our unloads with the weather and try to, as soon as the weather goes through, we'll try to get out as quick as we can. The crew usually spends 6 months each year fishing out of Coffs Harbour, but this season's weather may force them north like it did last year. The weather's just been coming one low after another, so consistently you're probably getting anything between 2 weeks down to probably 5 days of good weather. So you just got to fish every day you can get your hand on. A tough year for fishers, with big hikes in fuel costs as well.
And Claire Simmons joins us live now from Coffs Harbour. And Claire, not a good time to be out on the water.
Maddie, there's a severe weather warning with dangerous surf forecast for the border south to Yamba. And the seas are expected to reach waves of up to over 5 metres. Now, while the worst is expected to hit the coast from Friday evening until Saturday evening, those heavy seas could make beach conditions on the northern rivers very dangerous and lead to localised damage and coastal erosion. The low system off southeast Queensland is moving southwards and is expected to deepen tomorrow. People in locations from Yamba to the border are asked to stay away from the surf and locations exposed to the ocean.
Thanks for the update, Claire. Claire Simmons there live for us tonight from Coffs Harbour. Well, staying on all things weather, it's time now to check in with Phoebe Dees. And Phoebe, as we've been hearing, some really wild conditions up and down the coast.
Yeah, Maddie, that's right. Good evening, everyone. It has definitely been a windy, wintry, wild conditions today with plenty of rain across the region. And of course, as we've seen, some very dangerous surf. Parts of the Bellinger and Nambucca saw 19 millimetres, while 15 to 18 mil was picked up in some areas around the Tweed. Inland across the region, we saw around 1 and 2 millimetres fall. Winds also picking up this afternoon. Gusts got up to about 50 kilometres just before 4 o'clock at Ballina, and even on the border we had stronger winds. Now we are expecting much more rain and some hazardous surf tomorrow, but I will be back with all those details soon, Maddie.
Thanks, Phoebe. See you in a few minutes. Power prices are packing a punch right across the country, with families and small business finding it tough. For many, there's more price hikes on the way, so we're being warned to shop around.
The cost of living is hitting Aussies hard, and now your average North Coast home is being slugged with even higher energy prices. Many residents are cutting back as significant price hikes take their toll.
We actually haven't been using the heating very much because we want to wait and see what the bill is going to be. Yeah, so not happy at all. We're certainly conscious of it, so we're minimising checking lights, putting them off when they're on unnecessarily. But yeah, our last bill was huge compared to previously.
If you weren't delivered a price increase by your provider by July 1st, there's one on the way come August. The big bill's hurting the hip pockets of not just families, but also small business.
Well, I haven't received a bill since they went up in July, but in the 6 months prior to that, they've probably gone up about 40%. So I'm expecting my next bill to be a bit higher.
After a tough couple of years, the price hikes are having a big impact.
Oh, it's huge because you have to absorb those costs, but you can't keep absorbing them for too long. You know, we don't want to put our prices up, but sometimes you just have to.
Energy comparison service iSelect has recently run the numbers on what Australians are feeling and how they're coping. More than 60% of Aussies say they're worried. 19% say they've had to cut back on food. So we're being encouraged to look for the cheapest prices.
We are still seeing some small differences between plans and providers, and every dollar counts during these tough times. So I'd really encourage locals not to bury their head in the sand and take this as their cue to shop around.
Samantha Crowe, PRIME7 News.
Wildlife carers in the Byron Shire are pleading with motorists to slow down. Several koalas and their young have been killed in a matter of days, with calls for more warning signs to be put up in the area.
4 koalas have been killed in 4 days in the Byron Shire. Local resident Dale Viola pleading with motorists to slow down after she found a mother and Joey critically injured on the side of the road.
That was the worst night of my life.
Dale had spotted the pair a few days earlier and put up handmade signs to warn the public. Unfortunately, that is where they were found.
And we called up the vet, and luckily she came in to attend to them because we just didn't know what to do with them. They were badly injured.
Her and the Joey were just injured very, very badly, lots of breaks to many bones. And unfortunately, I couldn't save either of them, so had to euthanize both.
Just days later, another mother and Joey were hit and killed in Broken Head. And there are now calls for urgent action to install new warning signs.
We've been talking with state government and also with Bangalow koalas about what we can do and what kind of signage we can implement.
Koalas are now listed as an endangered species in New South Wales.
We as individuals have to be responsible when we're behind the wheel, when we're driving in known koala areas, to slow down.
The Friends of Koalas Hospital say the marsupials are moving around more because of warmer conditions, pleading with motorists to stop and check if they do unfortunately hit one.
We would ask they please stop, and if they have a blanket or something that they can put over the animal just to stop it, prevent it from moving away.
And don't hesitate to call for help.
And the number is 66221233. So they can call that number at any time of night and one of our rescuers will come out and pick up that koala.
Sam Payne, PRIME7 News.
A Nambucca Valley man accused of manslaughter has been exonerated in a jury trial. The court case follows the death of a 3-month-old baby in Nambucca Heads in 2019. Charged with manslaughter, Mitchell Stewart Gray appeared before Acting Judge Williams at Coffs Harbour District Court in a trial over several weeks. After more than 3 hours deliberation, a jury delivered a not guilty verdict. Farmers are on edge after a second detection of foot and mouth was found on Australian shores. Protective measures are being rolled out to try and keep the disease at bay, but farmers say far more needs to be done.
A frighteningly close call.
I think yesterday we saw the stark reality of FMD getting into this country.
Fragments of foot and mouth disease picked up in food products in Melbourne yesterday, a second detection at Adelaide Airport this afternoon. Farmers like Bruce Angel left shaken to the core.
Look, it'd be catastrophic, Penny. I don't,
There is great concern because we're only half a step from an introduction if someone brings something in illegally.
Today, some concrete action announced. Foot sanitisers at Australian and Indonesian airports, extra biosecurity officers employed, and now compulsory electronic tagging of sheep and goats in New South Wales. Bruce already has his animals electronically tagged. He says a tag
is a tool that we can use, but the bottom line is we've got to keep it out of here. That's what we have to do.
Calls for more preventative measures. Bruce wants to see the importation of meats from countries with the disease to be temporarily banned.
But I don't believe they're doing enough. throwing $14 million at an $80 billion industry is a bit of an insult, really.
The Commonwealth defending its measures this morning.
We've got strong biosecurity measures in place at our airports and our mail centres, but it's absolutely vital that the travelling public do the right thing here as well.
But those in the industry say it doesn't sound like the measures are enough to protect them. Farmers like Bruce are beginning to take biosecurity measures into their own hands in a desperate bid to keep their farms safe, asking anyone who's been in Indonesia in the past months to stay well away from their properties.
We have to take things into our own hands a bit. I think the government need to step up a lot more on biosecurity.
Penny Burford, PRIME7 News.
Manufacturers on the mid-north coast are tackling a widespread skills shortage by providing on-the-job training. They're taking the region's youth on the journey while moving into more modern engineering techniques.
Bale Defence in Port Macquarie has been engineering and manufacturing high-tech equipment for the Australian Defence Force and its allies for close to 40 years. Despite their international success, the family-run business is not immune to the national skills shortage that's crippled parts of the manufacturing industry.
We struggle to recruit good quality candidates, which is the reason why we're looking at internships and apprenticeships and traineeships within the business.
Apprentices like Bailey Clark, who's getting all his skilled training on the job.
It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. The opportunity came up and I just grabbed it as soon as I could.
For those hoping to enter the industry, sometimes getting a foot in the door is tough. Now a mechanical engineer with the company, Travis Goodshaw was initially brought on as an intern.
The training I'm getting here at Bale, you don't get that at university. The skills that you develop here, really hands-on, and you can learn from a lot of really experienced people who have been in the business for a long time.
Bale Defence providing training but also securing their workforce for the future.
They actually invest in us and we invest in them, which in turn invests in the business.
AE Gibson and Sons in Kendall has been designing and engineering specialised machinery for heavy industry for more than 125 years. They're another long-time local business creating jobs and solutions to the skills shortage through on-the-job training.
We're competing against, the cities and, mining and everything that's just recently been through a big boom. So for us, skill shortages in regional areas has been really tough.
Apprentices like Josh McVerry are part of the solution.
Out of school, doing work experience here, and then got a job here afterwards.
From apprentice now to apprentice trainer Lachlan Buttsworth's apprenticeship has been a good investment.
A lot of the smart fellas in here, they'll come through real well, these blokes here.
Now both companies will be receiving a cash injection from the state government's Jobs Creation Fund.
People want to see, jobs created locally, but they also want to see product made locally.
Apprentices and trainees are the heart and soul of our business.
Samantha Crowe, PRIME7 News.
Still to come in PRIME7 local news, accolades for a program to help young offenders back on track. And concern new temporary accommodation is on flood-prone land.
And a little later this news hour, a hospital system in distress. We have the harrowing accounts from nurses on the front line. The savage attack on a charity worker filmed by the thugs responsible, and a Mayday alert on a Qantas flight. What sparked the emergency over the WA outback?
You can catch up with PRIME7 local news anytime, anywhere on 7plus, and stay in touch 24/7 on 7news.com.au.
New temporary accommodation being built at Mullumbimby is causing concern for some residents. They believe it's being constructed on flood-prone land, which could put their whole neighbourhood at risk.
A new temporary accommodation project is underway in Mullumbimby, and residents are concerned.
There's been no consultation. We haven't been asked our opinion.
Steve Bellaby's been living in a bus after the floods damaged his house. He's worried the new site, that's only a few hundred metres away, could suffer the same fate.
Yeah, temporary accommodation, as I say, is called for, and we need it, but the site they've chosen is flood prone.
Steve claims he and other residents were only given a couple days' notice. Tracy McClymont believes locals' houses will become more prone to flooding because the land acts as a runoff.
It's going to cause an environmental disaster for the houses on Prince Street once the next flood comes.
The project is being run by Resilience New South Wales in collaboration with the Byron Shire Council. Mayor Michael Lyon says the site has been earmarked for a long time.
Oh, I don't accept that it's rushed. I mean, we've been through a site selection process over what's now become months.
Work started just over a week ago, laying down roads in preparation for the installation of temporary accommodation. The site is set to hold 180 people in 60 pods.
Ultimately, we have an emergency situation and we need to resolve it.
Resilience New South Wales has released a statement saying the housing site was identified through the Department of Planning and Environment after a comprehensive review. But locals still aren't convinced.
And I don't believe that this is the best site.
Sam Payne, PRIME7 News.
The Aboriginal Services Unit in Lismore has received some top-level recognition, presented with a New South Wales Premier's Award for their Circle Sentencing program, which gives young offenders an alternative path through the justice system. The staff say it's been a real team effort.
And just a good gathering for everyone to celebrate the amazing Circle program and what it represents in the community.
The award was originally given in 2020, but the presentation was delayed by the pandemic and floods. Still to come in PRIME7 local news, a day on the water at the Three Rivers Marathon, and a rugby union favourite returns after a 20-year absence.
Tomorrow on Sunrise, meet the Aussie dad with his hands full, raising a 9-month-old baby and an orphan Joey the same age.
Plus, Robert Irwin is back as our guest weatherman. We'll see you in the morning.
We keep hearing about the return of events delayed due to the pandemic and natural disasters, but one sports tournament is coming back after a 20-year absence. Sawtell Sevens has a special place in the memories of many country rugby union stalwarts, and it's back this October long weekend.
The North Coast Rugby Sevens three-round series in November last year was a consolation tournament for a season cut short by COVID. But the popularity of the faster open game also rekindled memories of another Sevens tournament of decades past. So the Cough Snappers will host Sawtell Sevens again this October long weekend.
It's such a prestigious event that hasn't been held for 20 years and people remember it as being one of the biggest seven comps back then. And that's what our goal is, to make it the biggest sevens comp in Australia.
The North Coast already boasts other big off-season tournaments like the Byron Sevens. Teams from southeast Queensland to Sydney and even some Fijian visitors flock to the Spring Carnival. But Sawtell Sevens is offering just a bit more.
We've got just over $45,000 in prize money on offer, which is one of the biggest in the country. And we're still growing. We're finding that we're getting more and more sponsors putting their hands up to come on board.
To be played at the Cough Snappers home ground and adjacent fields, it will be open to country men and women's teams, plus an elite invitation division with a bigger prize pool.
Right across the Shute Shield, Brisbane Premier Rugby, there's quite a few clubs across both of those that are interested, as well as those on our own doorstep with Mid-North Coast competition, New England.
Timed for end-of-season rugby tours, Cough Snappers plans to recover some of the purse.
Good to have us and both our women's side in there as well. Women's are going to probably have a really good showing in the competition.
Sawtell Sevens is now accepting team entries for October long weekend. Claire Simmons, PRIME7 News.
A marathon with a difference will be churning up the water in the Hastings this weekend. The Three Rivers Marathon is open for all self-propelled watercraft. The 25-kilometre event begins at the Telegraph Point Bridge and travels down the Wilson, Maria and Hastings rivers before finishing at Hibbard Drive. It's open to anybody over the age of 12. Still to come in PRIME7 local news, Phoebe will be back with your weather forecast. That's next.
Good evening. A high pressure system sitting in the Tasman is still keeping things pretty clear for our inland areas, but of course this east coast low and trough is deepening off southeast Queensland, and that will create some very unsettled weather for us on the coast, with powerful and dangerous surf, heavy rain and strong winds set to carry us into the weekend. Now the bulk of the rain over the next week will be falling on the coast, anywhere upward of 40 millimetres is expected. The northwest pockets could see some rainfall as well. Tomorrow there will be anywhere between 10 to 40 millimetres of rain falling, while those southerly winds will make things feel a lot colder, getting up around 25 kilometres an hour on the mid-coast, and in the northern rivers getting quite gusty, winds expected to get up to 35 kilometres an hour. And as we've heard, there is that severe weather warning for damaging surf. We also have gale force wind warnings in place for the Byron coastal waters. Coffs Harbour, just a strong wind warning there. Seas getting up at 2 metres, swell getting around 6 to 12 feet as well. Looking at Saturday, we should see some cloudy skies with a high chance of showers. Once again, we could be seeing between 6 to 15 mil falling. Once again, those really cool gusty winds could be an issue. At this stage, we could also expect some large, powerful surf as well. Casino, top of 17. If we take a look at Sunday now, the weather should be settling down just a little bit. Anywhere between 1 to 13 millimetres is predicted, and we will start to see that sun come out. Coffs Harbour 20, Evans Head 19 degrees. So some heavier rain before maybe some reprieve towards the end of the weekend. Maddie.
Thanks for the update, Phoebe. And that's all we have time for tonight. Your national news is up next, with businesses calling for calm as we tackle our third COVID wave. Have a great night.